Bishop and Nathan Zagura.
All right, let's do it live on a Tuesday cutdown day edition of Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Bo. He is the great Z. Yesterday, we mapped out 53. I should say you did, and I helped administer and took copious notes.
Yes.
So we could see by the time this show is over how close we were to that 53 that we projected yesterday. It's worth noting, too, that an initial 53 is not a final 53. In fact, you could see a lot of player movement today, as this goes along. There's going to be some waiver pickups that will go tomorrow. You think you make an initial 53, and then tomorrow you're out. So those type of things are going to take place as well. So whenever, if it happens during the show or whenever we get the official 53, understand that there's movement that can happen in that and likely will.
Yeah, 19 teams last year made a waiver claim. So 19 teams altered their initial 53 using the waiver process. Anybody who was a veteran whose contract was terminated, they are free to sign with the team immediately. So there could be changes even today in a 53 around the league. But that's kind of the process. You've made the initial 53. That's something to be very proud of, but it's still kind of you're holding your breath really probably until you get into the week of the game and are ready to, start going through the practices to get ready for the game. That's where you will see, the final 53 kind of shake itself out.
All right. In terms of what we know right now based on the reporting that is out, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The Patriots have informed veteran cornerback Terrence Money Mitchell of their intention to release him by today's deadline, according to a source. Sad. Come home, Money. Come home, Money Mitch. We got rallies for you, Money Mitch.
Can you imagine him? That's not that much of a him with Belichick. Never seems like that to me. Seemed like that was going to be a tough sell.
Come on, Big Bill.
Come on, Bill.
Big Bill. Yeah, sad. Well, I just saw that. Sorry, that affected me emotionally.
Yeah, as it would all of us. All right, so in terms of what's being reported right now, Jake Trotter on Twitter, per his sources, wide receiver Mike Harley, tight end Nakia Griffin-Stewart, offensive lineman Blake Hance. A little bit of a surprise there with Hance. I thought perhaps he would be somebody who would be in if that is reportedly the case, but he's on the outside looking in.
He wasn't on our sheet yesterday.
That would be a surprise if that is the way that goes. Yeah. Herb Miller, the corner, he was in parentheses for us yesterday. And so he's out. Johnny Stanton, now we saw him thank the fans of Cleveland, and he obviously had a special place here.
Love Johnny.
Absolutely. Dakota Allen, the linebacker, as well. Schefter with this one per sources. Brock Huffman from Cam Justice on Twitter. Sean Jolly. So that would lead us to believe we had both Jolly and Miller in parentheses.
So
is it possible? So
means we're keeping 5 corners.
Yeah. 5 corners is the way that would be if those reports are correct.
So that means there'll be a spot from our 53 we did yesterday. That means a spot's going to be open somewhere else.
Correct. Yeah. Per Josina Anderson on Twitter, John Kelly, Miller Forrestal. So that's interesting because at tight end now you say to yourself that number could be 2.
It is 2.
Has to be.
Has to be.
Yeah, because I guess we've gone over
Stanton, Zaire Mitchell-Payton, Nakia Griffin-Stewart, and Forrestal, 2 tight ends. And that's something that I introduced the idea of late last week and even on the game on Saturday night, that they will not keep 3 tight ends unless they felt there were 3 worthy of being kept. And so they've decided to go based on these reports with 2 tight ends. That is a spot that you could end up with. And I talked about this. Remember I said you could have that and maybe you can bring Forrestal and Nakia Griffin-Stewart or Zaire Mitchell-Payton back onto the practice squad. It sounds like with Johnny Stanton, that's not the plan there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns signed another tight end, somebody that's cut or a veteran that was released, like an O.J. Howard.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. So that's a spot where my guess is that the 53 is ultimately going to have 1 more, or we may just go into week 1 and just say, you know what, we're going to go with 2. We've got 2 on the practice squad. If we need to elevate them at some point, we'll do so. But that's
again hard for me to believe.
3,
that you could
and
only
that
have
was
2.
in parentheses. It was in
I know.
a parenthesis in that we weren't sure about that, but I wouldn't be surprised if ultimately we end up with another offensive player in the tight end room.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily connecting all the dots on this, but O.J. Howard from the Bills was cut previously of the Bucks.
Here's the
6'6",
thing.
251. That's your 5-star type.
Was a former first-round
pick, all that.
But the Bucks let him go. A good team with Super Bowl aspirations. The Bills, a team with Super Bowl aspirations, also let him go. So maybe there's not as much left in the tank after he's been banged up. He's gone through, I think, a lot with his lower body.
Yeah.
So maybe there just isn't anything left in the tank there. But that's a name that
there's certainly a name that you saw.
It's out there. It's certainly a name that you've seen. So right now, what we know is 5. The 2 surprises are 5 corners, 2 tight ends, which means you're probably going to get an extra one on the same sides of the ball. So you're probably get an extra offensive player, and to me that has to come on the offensive line. And then you've got to get an extra defensive player, and the only thing I can think of is that remember we were saying there are 3 guys for 2 spots, Winovich, Rochelle, and Isaiah Thomas, and that they have opted to not make that decision yet.
Yeah, so our initial projections had 5 defensive ends. Looks like it'll be 6. Our initial projections had 6 corners. Looks like that'll be 5.
Yep.
I think that's realistic to believe that. And then on the other side of the ball, if you go from 3 tight ends to 2, then your offensive line would go from 9 to 10.
And that's it.
And that would be the list. Those would be the 2 that, in terms of things that we missed, not much. Pretty good job out of you, as is typically the case when it comes to the 53 of who's going to make it and who is not. It would also lead you to believe, I think, that it's fair to assume that there would be potentially some movement here when you're talking about 10 offensive linemen. It would be hard for me to believe that we would go into next week with 10 offensive linemen on the 53.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think if you were to look at, based on the names that we've seen, it feels like we will be overloaded with interior offensive linemen in the 10 because, Michael Dunn, who's your backup center, also can play guard. Hubbard can play guard. Yelda Froholt can play guard and center. And then Drew Forbes can play guard if Drew Forbes indeed makes this 53 as that 10th lineman. The only other person, because I haven't seen the name Alex Taylor yet in terms of being a reported cut, he'd be another tackle. So my guess, though, is it's a glut on the interior, and that's a place that's appealing to other teams around the league. And so that would be a position of strength from which the Browns would be able to make some type of a maneuver, I would guess.
So that's just kind of where you are right now. Did you see anything else surprising around the league? I know we'll get to Garoppolo and all of those things that happened last night. Get to those momentarily. But was there anything else from a cut-down standpoint that caused some attention for you today? This morning?
No, I thought that the trade, Saints trading Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to the Eagles was big, and the Eagles cut Anthony Harris, who was in Minnesota, led the league in interceptions.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
With our staff there. He was cut, as was Jaquiski Tart, who they brought in, who's been a starting safety for the Niners forever. So those are 2 guys that would know, Joe Woods. Certainly Tart was with him in San Francisco, and then Jeff Howard would be very familiar with Anthony Harris. They decided to cut them. They bring in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. The Saints are loaded in the DB room, and now they get a start. They're going to start him at safety, the Eagles. And so he was a free agent at the end of the year, so I think the Saints figured, hey, let's get something for him now. And so they did. That to me, was an interesting one. Laviska Shenault, and I know a lot of Browns fans are looking at him as a slot guy, goes to the Panthers for kind of just a minor trade. When you see 7th and 6th round picks, that's kind of a minor thing. And then staying in our division, Kenyon Drake getting signed, who's still got some juice and can catch the ball in the backfield. That just tells me, I think, more about
JK
and Gus not being totally ready to go.
Yeah, that's the way I read that as well. Speaking of, did you see all of Lamar's activity yesterday on social?
Oh boy, I did.
With the Dolphins. Do you think that's just a matter of, when you don't have an agent, you have to do the truth telling to the player versus through the agent? The agent can sugarcoat.
Sure.
And because it just feels like that's been off since February.
Oh my God.
It remains off.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of weeks before the season. So
it feels like, look, everything could work out. You know what I mean? Everything could work out. But it feels like that is headed for a breakup. And we said the team that if, let's say, Tua struggles a little bit, that's a pretty ready-made roster. That's one of the ready-made teams to plop a quarterback into. So, and that's the way he can exercise leverage. And he was, he also went on and said, no, they did not offer me $250 million. No, not true.
Not true.
That's one of the interesting things about this time. And he would know, right? You're exactly right. So it's very interesting.
Speaking of the Dolphins, I saw a tweet from somebody. It might have been Warren Sharp over the weekend. Boy, I'm so excited. I was so excited to see what Mike McDaniel can do with Tua and Tyreek Hill. And he said, it's just amazing to see he actually incorporated a 40-yard curl. And what it was, Tyreek gets deep, Tua underthrows it, and he has to come back to the ball. I thought that was quite funny out of him.
Yeah.
Speaking of Carolina, you mentioned the move for Laviska Shenault. Cynthia Freeland on a podcast.
Oh, baby.
Cynthia Freeland on a podcast, and she's a friend of the program. We've had Cynthia on a lot.
Yeah, great friend of the program.
And I'm guessing that she's probably in quite a bit of hot water for this, because this is an offhanded comment made on the field not meant for public consumption very clearly, and then to go with it is a tough spot. Really, really tough spot.
Did you listen to it? Now, she could have said, the way the question was asked, hey, because I'm sure she had said, hey, some people, and they're like, hey, well, why don't you tell that story right now?
Yeah.
And she did. It's a podcast. So she could have said, actually, no, I'm not going to tell that story right now in this forum. But she decided to. And
I think sometimes you get that stuff and you
listen.
It's
this game had all the theater you wanted.
And he was going to do all of this anyway. Like, this is who he is. It's why you loved him when he was here and it was going good. It's who he is. Chesty Baker is who he is.
I'll tell you, our defense did not need any extra motivation, but if it's possible to be like motivated +5, they're now motivated +5.
Yeah, they didn't need it. They're
good.
It. They're good to go. And it's also,
but they're going to use it.
I think it's also maybe speaks to why everything that happened here, even before the Deshaun Watson acquisition, like we were heading in a different direction anyway. Just from a personality standpoint, this doesn't mesh with who we are.
No,
it doesn't.
No,
so,
culture of calm.
It doesn't. No, but I also think to be fair to Baker, I'm sure he did not anticipate that to be something that was going to be made public. Clearly.
Fair. I also think he has no problem.
Both can be true
with it being made public. I'm sure
both can be true.
Now, his new employer might have a problem with it, but he's not going to have any. Of course, this is exactly what he would say. This is either going to be, looking at it from the Browns' perspective, take care of business, get the monkey off our back about week 1, get a win, start the season the right way, handle whatever if there is any personal animus, get that taken out on the field. And then on his side, it's like the biggest flag plant opportunity of his life, right? I mean,
he's done this. He did this at Oklahoma when they played Texas Tech. He took it personal every time they played Texas. He tried to plant a flag in the Ohio Stadium center field after Ohio State won the week before. Yeah. Correct? Turf didn't go well.
Yeah.
But the year before, Ohio State put it on Oklahoma in Norman. So this is how he operates. He operates very well in these circumstances. Historically, this is a little different circumstance, obviously. I think it's right. I think it's both true that was something that was said off the record in passing that probably didn't anticipate being shared, but also that he's fine that it was. Now, his coach is going to have to answer for it. His teammates are going to have to answer for it. Kevin Stefanski's going to be available. He'll be asked about it. Of course, he's going to say, I'm not paying attention to any of it. I never saw it, which I don't believe.
Yes.
But nevertheless, that's the way that he's going to play it. So that's the way that is. I said this last week. I can't remember if I said it with you or on another venue. That game in this market, the share of television eyeballs that are on because of all that's involved in that, I can't even imagine what it does here from a rating standpoint, television-wise. I just can't even imagine it.
Can I ask you just this is a total quick aside.
Please.
This is a world that my wife, has to live in and navigate. Why is Nielsen still a thing? We all have our own services. They should know exactly what's on every TV, not extrapolating.
They do.
They do know what's on every TV in this country at any second.
I think it's absurd that it's still that way. The radio stuff's even more crazy. The radio rating stuff is even more crazy. That's Arbitron, isn't it, Gibbe? Yeah. I mean, that's even.
But we know, YouTube TV, for example, knows everybody who's watching the game. DirecTV knows everybody who's watching the game.
For sure.
Your cable company knows everybody who's watching.
They know exactly who's watching.
100%.
Who's watching what, when they're watching it. The
100%.
idea that there's still however many boxes on televisions
and
or whatever.
Those are the ones
who are dictating who's watching.
Is crazy.
This is the best we can do? Or do you think it's just we're so lazy we don't matter anymore?
HBO tells you how many streams, that's real.
For
HBO
sure.
saying this is how many people did this.
Yeah.
And we know this.
10.2 million, by the way.
It's a fact. Yeah, which is a big number for a streaming show.
Yeah, the big one for them will be the third one because the first one sets the tone. Okay, yeah, we're in. Let's go back. Let's see. The big number for them will be the third number because that'll be the one. Okay, this is what the story's going to be. So if they get a big number it's already been renewed.
How could it not be? Because the second one was electric.
Well, it was. The last 30 minutes, 25 minutes were unbelievable. So I think you're going to see that number high again.
Yeah, I think you might.
But it's the second one that's the key.
I think you might go like this.
Gibbe?
Yeah, I mean, the whole Arbitron thing is a farce.
It always has. I mean, I've been in this business a while. It's crazy.
You get all you need is one person that's like a diehard fan of a certain station or a certain genre.
Because what is it, 500 boxes or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number's a little more than that now, but it still doesn't match the listening audience. But one person can represent thousands of people.
Right.
Which is just stupid.
It is, yeah. Why are you mad at Gibbe?
I'm mad at Gibbe. He knows.
Why? What happened?
I like to live in a world that is optimistic, enthusiastic,
for sure.
full of life and vitality and joy and
you thrive on
excitement
enthusiasm.
about the future and
You're
belief.
an idea man.
Negative Nancy over there was just trying to bring me down all morning, and I'm not having it. I'm not having it.
Why
I
you trying
wasn't.
to seep his joy?
I wasn't. I came out. We had some discussions about some things, about forecasting the future, and I was like,
He was like the conductor of the negative town train, full speed ahead like a bullet train, and I'm over here trying to fly around in Positiveville.
Bishop, you do have to remember, the slightest little thing sets our boy off for the rest of the day. So it's like
it's like the most outrageous accusation anybody's ever levied against me in the history of my life.
That's not true.
That is not. See?
No, just yesterday a different
I said,
allegation was levied against you
by a
that
credible,
was more outrageous.
by a credible
okay,
person.
by credible, fine, but you have to have.
Are you not calling me credible?
No,
you are.
I just said you were credible.
Accusations leveled yesterday, not credible.
No.
I think this is why it's the yin and the yang of the two of you. It all works out.
You know, I mean, it's fine.
We had a great moment.
I try to be even Steven.
We also had a great no, you don't. You're very positive. We had a great moment pre-show as well where we went through one of those things where like Gibbe made a declaration like he did about Matt Stafford, how he's been injury-riddled his entire career.
Yep.
And so then we went to the evidence.
I gave him carte blanche to just run me over here with the bus.
because I don't want to even bring up, but nonetheless, not these quite healthy humans.
No, played a lot. Yeah.
Not only did I go 0 for 1, but I went 0 for 2.
Your second presumption
about
was
the
wrong
biggest
too?
going down
Well,
in
tell the
flame
people. I mean, you've
train
already
wreck
done Wednesday
that one
night
person
taped and
can
Matt
do.
Stafford's injury prone. What else could there be?
Well, I thought there were a couple people on our team that might be injury prone.
Not
turns out not at all.
Not at all, as it turns out.
One of them's never even missed a game.
No, he's missed one.
Other than COVID. That's not an injury.
No. That's
that
amazing.
is not. That means he's missed one.
That's it.
Right.
That's the list.
It's the best I got.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Oh man.
What did you make? Well, let's let's save this. We'll get into the Garoppolo stuff in a second here and the play that was made there. But I do stand.
Boots on the ground's got a big take on that.
On which one? On
Nerd.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet he does.
Big take.
Well, I bet he does. Yeah, I think he's fair to have his take on all of that. But yeah, so anyway, this will be it was going to be a fun opener anyway. It is a bit of a referendum for both. It fits into everything that Baker loves more than anything else, which is to find. I remember even when he was here, and he would everyone's doubting him. I'm like, well, dude, look, you won the Heisman. You're the number one pick in the draft. Like there actually aren't that many people doubting you. Like it's a lot of people think you're really good. You know what I mean?
Hug him.
But he would find it. Yeah, you wanted to hug him all the time. You're always doing that.
I know.
It's unbelievable. And so now, the comments are what the comments are. It's going to be a fun opener next week down in Carolina.
Like this
What would you want him to say? Of course he's going to say that. That's who he is.
Of course.
Yeah.
And this is fine. You know what? It's fine. This is the thing. This is just a quick aside. You should be able to taunt. These guys put their lives on the line. Literally, their physical well-being. They dedicate themselves so fully, as do all the coaches, to have success. When you go out there and get to play the game, there's a reason that certain wrestling matches or boxing matches or MMA fights have more interest. And that is because people take a microphone and they talk your butts right into the seats or your eyeballs right into pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Because there is something about the hype and the talk, the build-up to make a main event feel even more special. And we live in our sports world for some reason where, like, you're not supposed to do that. There's not supposed to be any.
We used to do it.
And it used to be great.
It used to be quite common to be able to run your mouth back and forth.
Of course.
The teams.
And that will settle it on the field.
And we'll settle it on the field. Like Florida State and Florida used to do that. Spurrier was always poking Bowden, and Bowden would poke him back, and all of that stuff. Like it sold it, man. Like everybody won, and now we have so many of these coaches that are just robots. And I don't know if it's from the Belichick, if it's from that arena,
too.
But
like
players do it too.
Can't say anything inflammatory.
No, they're coached to say it. I'll say this about Baker: it wasn't always fun. Like we would run his pressers, and then it would come back to you and I, and we'd go, well. I don't know what we can add to that. because he would do something positively or negatively. But it was always interesting. It was always interesting. So I'm a fan of interesting. Give me more of it. I wish there were more people who would poke
fun.
bears.
That's why you have rivalries.
And by the way, the notion that you need bulletin board of material. I mean, I heard Marcus Freeman, who's a good friend and employs one of my very good friends now at Notre Dame yesterday, saying how Ohio State's a 17.5-point favorite, and he goes 17.5. By the way, that's number 2 against number 5, and they're a 17.5-point favorite. And he goes, I'm gonna have to, that'll definitely get brought up in our meetings. I'm like, really? Does Notre Dame? I understand what he's doing, but does Notre Dame? Do their players need to be extra motivated? They're playing at Ohio State on Saturday night.
Week 1.
Come on, they're going to be properly motivated. Like they're not going to need any help.
If you're not, then you will get beat by 17.
Who's not going to be though?
You will get beat by way more.
I mean, my God, my little dudes like 6, 8, and 10 are motivated to. We're jacked up to play Medina on Saturday afternoon.
Let's go.
You know what I mean? Like it's the Super Bowl to them. So that if you play the sport and you're a man in the arena, why do you bulletin board material just seems nonsensical to me that you would need it.
You don't need it. It can definitely be like a little, fan the flames.
It proves. I think what it does is it proves your point that don't worry so much about it. Like it's not going to make that big of a difference.
Like I go back to, and this drove my dad crazy, but T.O. going and on the star.
Yeah.
And then he gets hit by Roy Williams. Like that's great.
It was awesome.
All of it was great. What he did, great. If you don't like it, stop me from scoring. And what Roy Williams did, also great. And then in wrestling, you'd have a pull-apart brawl, security be out there. I'm still going to get you. And then somebody would break free to brawl a little more.
Yeah.
Like, that's great.
It's a win.
There's no problem. Here's the thing that's hard. And the sport is such a – and I wish actually now that we're on down this random tangent that we had the Hoff on today, because I've been so privileged to be on the sidelines for 8 years. And one of the things that I enjoy the most after a game is walking onto the field, and you get to see the guys who have been with the Browns, and there's typically been a lot of Browns players and coaches that I've seen who are still in the league in other places. But it really is a brotherhood, and they all know that. So, like, to play a little bit into the game or the showmanship or the trash talk, and there will be times where people genuinely don't like one another. You see that in the NBA. Pat Beverly will get under somebody's skin, or Marcus Smart, and there'll be some real, we don't like each other trash talk. But that's okay, too.
It's all right.
Like, we grew up in an era with the Celtics and the Lakers. They hated each other. They detested each other. Punching, fighting, the Pistons.
Rambus being clotheslined and then fighting Burt. I mean, like the
But
whole
it was
thing.
elite players that had that extra.
McHale.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
Larry Bird and Dr. J fought on the court.
Fist fight.
It's all right.
It's all
Have
right.
a little emotion from time to time. By the way, speaking of the wrestling, I'm not sure that we can. It's getting a little racy on the Raw for the kids.
Well, yeah,
it's been amped
up a little bit.
Amped up a little bit. I was watching a little last night, and I said, you know what, Bud? I think maybe we'll skip.
Is this for
one.
NBC?
Yeah, for NBC.
He's ready. He's ready. Come on, that's a great. Last night they featured the women's tag team tournament in the main event of Raw. That's a nice, it was
a nice,
empowering.
but there was a couple.
Was that up in the Pukerville?
A couple other things happened, and I was like, yeah, I think let's go back to watching 30 for 30. Let's find something there that we can circle. All right, we'll go around the NFL, and hopefully we'll have our official 53 by the time we're done with the show here. That would be nice to be able to have that. But I think the big differences here from yesterday's projections from Z and the realities are, instead of 3 tight ends feels like 2, instead of 9 offensive linemen feels like 10. Defensive end instead of 5, it probably will be 6, and corner instead of 6, it'll be 5. Yeah. So other than that, it feels like it feels
like a 51.
51 out of 53, which is a very good. Now, would Pedro be happy with you on a 51 out of 53?
Yeah.
That's
an
okay.
A. It's a solid A.
That's a solid A. He'd take that?
Yeah.
What do you want to know, the ones you got wrong?
Yeah. But I think I have good, this would be one where,
is that a DA if it's?
No, because I think what I would have here is, like sometimes in a math problem, for example, if you ended up with the wrong answer, but the work was right. Like,
yeah.
Conceptually, I was correct.
Correct.
It just was, again, it's a puzzle piece, and the puzzles, they just were here instead of here.
Yeah, I like
That's
it.
all.
All right, we'll go around the league, including this deal. We can't wait to hear the boots in the ground report on the Garoppolo deal from Not Pedro. That's going to be classic. We'll go around the league as well. We're off and running. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
SBN Cleveland.
The Bath Authority gave you the bathroom of your dreams. Why not transform your current bathroom into a custom bath that'll feel like a spa? Let the Bath Authority make it a reality to you for the fraction of the cost of the competitors. The Bath Authority is our area's premier bath and shower remodeler. They are experts and factory-trained installers. Give them a call now. You get $500 off your next custom bath or shower remodel. The number is 216-220-8399 or go to thebathauthority.com. It's where affordability meets quality with the largest selection of bath projects, all made right here in America. Change your bathroom from outdated to outstanding. Superior products and expert installers at 216-220-8399. Go to thebathauthority.com. $500 off right now for more. So I didn't see this. Jimmy G sticking around on a contract renegotiation.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, it happened last night. Yeah. I don't think they wanted – number one, multiple things here. I don't think they wanted to send him to Seattle, which really was the only place that kind of made sense at this point.
No, it doesn't. No, Seattle didn't want him.
And they didn't want him.
Seattle's tanking. They don't want.
I feel like you're right. And they didn't want to send him.
If you have Geno Smith and Drew Lock and you're starting Geno Smith at 31, you're not trying. And that's okay because
Yes.
I think they're going to get a good quarterback in the draft.
Yes.
I get it. The plan makes sense. They've won a lot there. There isn't a dance partner for him out there.
Yep.
That's the real thing, unless he wants to go somewhere and back up an established guy, which he probably doesn't.
Yes. I think that what they decided was to, number one, keep Jimmy here because Trey Lance has been up and down. Number two, it is important to have a good backup quarterback in the NFL, and especially with Trey Lance, who's going to win with his legs as well as his arm. And so that's what they're going to do. And my dad immediately,
Nerd, they must be panicking about Lance.
that's what Pedro said. I said, maybe, but I also think that they probably, as opposed to just cutting him, he's still a guy that you can go to the Super Bowl with. So in the event that you need him to play quarterback, your season is far from lost. That's what I thought. I mean, that's kind of just the way that I see it. He took a big pay cut. He has a chance if he has to play and play well, he can earn, I think, up to 16.5. And I think it's just that simple.
Two things jump out to me. One, I mean, they have a very strong culture and leadership there, so that helps you pull this off. It will all be tested by this because if Lance struggles and you're Nick Bosa or Deebo Samuel and you go, wait a second, that guy helped us go to Green Bay and win. That guy quarterbacked in a Super Bowl. Meantime, I'm dealing with this rookie who can't read a defense properly. So Kyle's going to have to manage that. Now, he's not somebody who's shy of managing things.
No, he's not shy of managing.
But that could be a real hurdle that they could have to get over with there. The other part of it is everything that I've read, whether it's Peter King or anybody else who did a camp tour, has been that they've basically totally been divorced.
He's been off on his own.
On his own.
We talked about this yesterday.
On his own. Like he doesn't commingle. So now all of a sudden he's going to commingle.
That's right.
That's going to be a very, very strange thing as well. The third thing about this is the bonus 3, if you will, is if there's an injury, now they're in the catbird seat on a trade.
Number one, yes, catbird seat. Number two, they're basically paying a guy who is very, very good $6.5 million. I mean, it's a great deal for them.
Yeah, and there's also the other part of it is like you said, like people say, well, why even like with Baker here it had with Watson, like you have to know humans' personalities.
Yep.
Jimmy Garoppolo has done this before with Brady. He probably don't like it, but he'll be a pro and he'll handle his business and be the backup until opportunity presents or until there's an opportunity around the league where he can go be a starter again.
Yep.
So that's part of it too. If Kyle can manage the first thing I talked about, then you're safe, pal.
And I think he can. And now they have the best backup.
It amps the pressure on Lance, though.
For sure.
For sure. Like it will be.
You've got to deliver.
You'll feel it. He'll feel it. You're going to see him.
Yeah, he's going to be there. The guy that the last 2 full seasons he's played, Super Bowl appearance, NFC Championship appearance.
Yeah.
The end. Game-winning drive against the Rams to get into the playoffs. Game-winning drive to beat the Bengals, those are the 2 Super Bowl teams. He beat both of them with game-winning drives in the last quarter of the season when it mattered. Yeah, it definitely amps it up on him. There's no doubt. But if you're a 49ers fan, this is a great thing for you.
It's an incredible insurance policy.
Yes.
He knows it.
It's the best.
It puts him in a great spot.
It's the best.
So with the quarterback situations kind of being handled around the league, Seattle, Atlanta, Houston, the race for number 1. Houston's going to have the toughest road of those because of how weak that division is. The AFC South's not great.
I'm telling you, they like Davis Mills. It is not nonsense.
To a certain extent.
They really do. I'm telling you.
To a certain extent. Like, if they were in position to – are you suggesting they like him so much that if they went 2-15 –
like, I don't think they're trying to tank.
I understand that. But if they went 2-15, they wouldn't be like, nah, no C.J. Stroud. We're going to go Davis Mills.
Then
they're not doing that.
Well, then that would be proof that perhaps their current infatuation was misguided.
Misguided, which could probably be said about a lot of things that organization has done in the last 5-6 years.
Sure.
And Atlanta and Seattle are the two most obvious, like, let's handicap ourselves a little bit. Atlanta's set up for it perfectly. They have Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Ridley's out this year, suspended. You go with Mariota for the year, put yourself in a position to draft near the top, and they're in a pretty good spot immediately. What's crazy about it is Seattle and Atlanta, if those are the two that pick at the top, both of those are incredible landing spots for Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. A lot of weapons.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very, very different than the situation Fields was in Chicago, certainly.
Absolutely, and that he still finds himself in. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely is. Other things around the league, I mentioned the O.J. Howard release by the Bills, former first-round pick out of Alabama, was in Tampa for his entire career and then was in camp with the Bills. He is out. Our old buddy Josh Gordon cut by the Kansas City Chiefs
Rough
as well.
Day for former Browns. Josh Gordon, Duke Johnson, Money Mitch, Trevon Coley.
Philip Lindsay cut by the Colts as well. Sony Michel cut by the Dolphins.
He's really had a precipitous fall.
Gosh almighty, Belichick. Sony Michel over Nick Chubb.
He actually had a couple of decent seasons for them, too, which is wild. And then just, that's it. See you later. Thanks for coming. What do you think his best season with the Patriots was?
900 yards.
Yeah, he had 9. First two, he said last year he actually had 845 yards and 4 touchdowns for the Rams, which I would not have had.
In 17 games.
Yeah, but only 7 started. They had Cam Akers and Henderson.
Well, Akers went out early, though, right? And then Henderson went out during the season.
Yeah, his best year there was 9, 12, and 7. But his in 2018 when they win a Super Bowl, in that playoff run.
Oh, he was good in the playoff run. I remember this.
71 carries, 336 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaged 112 yards rushing a game, 5 yards a carry, and they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you wonder what happened.
Where does it
between
go?
That and the 2019 season for him. Ravens planning to sign running back Kenyon Drake, pending a physical after being cut by the Raiders last week. In addition to that, we mentioned Laviska Shenault going to the Panthers. Panthers are all in now on Matt Rule and Baker and all of it. Feels like for this year at least, they're completely all in. Yeah. They're trying to win right now for him. The Saints trade. You mentioned this. The Saints trading defensive back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to the Eagles, per Rappaport and Pelissaro as well. Broncos trading linebacker Malik Reed to the Steelers for late draft pick compensation per Adam Schefter. So those are just some of the things that are out there from a notable roster move standpoint. The notable ones are notable.
No doubt. No doubt. And this is a tough day. There are a lot of people whose dreams come to an end. Now, a lot will be invited back onto practice squads around the league. Some will end up on other teams. But when you think of the chances of being picked up, I'll remind people again. So 900 guys roughly are cut today. 27 of them were claimed off of waivers last year.
Yeah.
So the odds are not great that is going to be somebody's path. And, for the guys that are guy 52, 53, it's a sleepless night. There's a lot of elation, but there's also some trepidation that is it still going to be that way tomorrow?
How do they play it tonight on Hard Knocks? Because it's happening now. So do they get that? Because the last episode of Hard Knocks always used to be the cut down episode.
They'll get that. They'll
but that won't be
shooting
today.
right now.
You think they're shooting right now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is the second year of this calendar.
And the Lions, the Lions probably could have helped them, done a lot of this yesterday or this morning. Do you know what I mean?
If
For
they
being
wanted
on Hard
to,
Knocks.
yeah.
Right. There's no benefit.
I can't remember Hard Knocks last year with Dallas if they showed the cut down in the final episode or not. Last year in Dallas, they spent so much time with Jera and Dak and Zeke.
Yeah.
I don't remember the guys
this
on the edge.
This one's great.
No, this one is. Yeah. But in the old days, you'd get a cut down on a Saturday.
Right.
So you'd have those days
Tuesday,
to produce it.
for sure.
You'd have a little bit of time. All right, coming up at the top of the hour, John Hansen will join us, SiriusXM Fantasy, get you set for your drafts. This is my favorite fantasy draft weekend. Is this weekend is really the perfect weekend for it. I think I'm doing mine on Monday night, 9 o'clock, which I'm a big fan of that. We'll keep you updated on the roster movement that could happen. In addition to that, Jake Trotter at 2:30. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Well, there's a new way to cheer on your Cleveland Browns with the help of your favorite four-legged companion. Barking Backers, presented by Milkbone, is the Browns' newest club for pet parents worldwide. Sign up today at barkingbackers.com. Barking Backers, the fan club for dogs. And at least for now, we know the 53 guys you're going to be cheering for.
Yeah, so the Browns 53 is initial 53 now official. And so we'll go quarterbacks 2, Jacoby Brissett, Josh Dobbs. Running backs, they say 5. They have Demetric Felton listed as a running back, even though he's played wide receiver. I'll call him a receiver. Running backs, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, and Jerome Ford. Receivers, Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, David Bell, Demetric Felton, and Mike Woods, who I'm told will be back in action soon and could be ready for week 1. 2 tight ends, as we said, Harrison Bryant, David Njoku. 10 offensive linemen, Joel Bitonio, Jack Conklin, Michael Dunn, Drew Forbes, Yelda Froholt, Chris Hubbard, James Hudson, Ethan Posick, Wyatt Teller, Jed Wills Jr. So heavy on the backup guards. That's an area that I think a move could be made. So we had 3 tight ends, 9 offensive linemen yesterday. Forrest All, we know, Stanton, Nakia Griffin-Stewart released. Drew Forbes makes it, so we go from still 24 on the offense, like yesterday we said.
You had that, just so people understand. Z had 24, nailed it. We had in parentheses the only thing that I can even say that I know you mentioned in the broadcast, but we did think there'd be 3 tight ends, and there were 2. So That was it. Everything else nailed it. Forbes would be the other surprise. So you get the 24 correct, the right amount, and you end up just with a swap of 1 each way, 23 at 24.
And then on the defense, you get on the defensive line now 6 defensive ends. They felt that they had 6 NFL defensive ends. I knew that. I just didn't know if they would keep more than 6. This is a spot to watch as one that could be trimmed in the future. But you've got Miles Clowney, Alex Wright, Chase Winovich, Isaac Rochelle, and the rookie Isaiah Thomas. And I thought Winovich, Rochelle, and Thomas were 3 for 2, 3 for 3. You get them all.
3.
Defensive tackles, and this would be a place I would not be surprised to see perhaps a move made. You've got Jordan Elliott, Taven Bryan, Tommy Togiai, Perrion Winfrey, the 4 we knew from the start. 6 linebackers, and we had this exactly right.
Nailed it.
J.O.K., Tony Fields, Anthony Walker, Jacob Phillips, Sione Takitaki, and my guy Jordan Kunashik. Love that guy.
Loved him, yeah.
51.
All 6 of those guys you had.
So then here's where the surprise was: only 5 corners. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Greedy Williams, MJ, AJ. Herb Miller does not make team. We thought Miller or Jolly. I think both could be back on the practice squad, but neither on the initial 53.
And the issue with Miller there is pretty good special teams.
Gunner, very good gunner on special teams, and probably was slated to start in that capacity had he been on the team. So we'll see how that ends up. And again, initial 53 doesn't mean he's not on the week 153 either. And then the 5 safeties, which we had: John Johnson, Ronnie Harrison, Grant Delpit, Rich LeCount, and D. Anthony Bell, the first undrafted free agent to make it since Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have been here. So shout out to him. And I feel like that's a secure one. So if you're saying, okay, if we're to do something, where could it be? I think we could add a tight end. I think that we could lose an offensive lineman. I think we could lose a defensive end and add a wide receiver or a corner. I think everything else. And maybe you decide that to shake things up in the linebacker room, like with Fields and Kunashik, if there's somebody that comes available that they really love. And that's probably true of most positions except, quarterback, running back, the 2 tight ends that are there, and your safeties are good. I think it looks good. I wouldn't expect much change. I think that things could shift around as we go forward. And again, if you're looking at where could the Browns trade from to try to address a weakness, I think it's coming from either the running back position, the offensive line, or the defensive end position. I think that could be a spot where you are overloaded. 6 defensive ends are unlikely to be on this 53 all year. So
you got 51 out of 53.
51 out of 53.
Good job out of you.
We'll take it.
Yeah, we will. Look, and as the league cuts down, this will be so you've got this 53 initially. You'll have tomorrow where you'll have some waiver. The waiver claims are tomorrow, right? Just from a chronological standpoint.
Yep.
So you'll have that tomorrow.
And veterans.
Can you imagine the emotion of that?
Yeah.
Like to be you make a 53 and you're celebrating, and that is something to celebrate because my God, do you think you're at 80? What were you at, 87? What were we at over the week before
80.
Last weekend? We were before.
Oh, 85.
85. So you go from 85 to 53 in less than a week.
You went from 90 to 85 to 80.
Yeah.
And then now from 80 to 53. So noon Wednesday, noon tomorrow for waiver cutdowns. And so waiver cutdowns are guys who are not vested veterans, people on their first 4 years in the league. So teams must have their waiver claims put in And around noon, teams will be notified if they were awarded any players off of the waivers. Once those notices are sent out, teams can start to sign players that are 16-man practice squad. So that all happens tomorrow. Practice squad, waiver claims, that happens tomorrow. By 4 p.m., teams can start to place players on their 53-man roster on IR with an eligibility to return after a minimum of 4 games. Any player placed on IR before 4 p.m. tomorrow will be lost for the season. I don't think we have anybody on our roster who fits that bill.
Candidate for that.
So last year was, I want to say, Jacob Phillips. We carried on the initial 53 to place on IR. Then we were able to activate Elijah Lee, who we had cut, and brought him back, and he was then active for week 1. So that's how it goes. Anybody who's cut that is a vested veteran, so that's somebody on their second contract in the NFL, that player is free to sign whenever. They're just immediately free agents. Like Sheldon Day, for example, immediately a free agent. O.J. Howard would be immediately a free agent.
You said something there as you were going through it quickly, but Michael Woods, we thought that he would. He was so good early in camp.
Yeah, we had him on there.
But you thought we did. We had him in parentheses.
Yep. But
we did have him in the mix as one of the receivers. Optimism that he could be ready.
Yeah, for week 1, that his hammy's coming along, which is good.
Yeah, and he was somebody that I think it's hard to say that, what type of – it's hard to say, well, we were counting on him. But early on in camp led you to believe that perhaps you could. I mean, this is a 6th-round pick, but he was damn good early on.
Very good. And the guy that the corners thought was the toughest to go against, by the way, Pedro's listening. He's listening. He said, not panicked. Exact quote in the text was, guess they were worried about Lance, which is true. But I was embellishing for the fun of it.
How does he feel about the fact that not Pedro, which, by the way, he is Pedro. He lost the trial of Pedro, so he is Pedro.
But he's also not
But he's
Pedro.
just also not Pedro, that there's a not Black Cobra.
This might be the first that he's hearing.
First you've heard of it,
yeah.
that there's –
so, Dad,
now they have something in common.
Dad, if you're listening, Bo's oldest had the nickname Black Cobra for basically his entire life.
He gave it to himself when he was like 3. 2 or 3, whatever. And then it finally occurred to him that it was maybe absurd. So can you get me another nickname?
He said, sure.
Sure.
Not Black Cobra.
Not Black Cobra.
That's who you are. NBC.
NBC.
Yeah. So you're a trendsetter, Dad. Love that.
That's it. Yeah.
He said, so Jimmy has a no-trade clause, $500K per game roster bonus plus performance incentives get out up to 23. And then, yes, he asked me last year, only 27 out or claimed on cutdown. That is accurate. Yes, indeed it is.
He's fact-checking now?
Yeah, apparently he's fact-checking me, which is ironic.
This is like your youth.
This is unbelievable. That
all
he's
the while when
me.
you went 51 and 53, and he wants to double check.
He's focused on that. That's what he's focused on. So I liked the tweet yesterday. It was from Aaron Wilson, who's covered the NFL for a long, long time. And he said, and I quote, let's pull this right up here because it's right at the top of my links. A year ago, there were 27 total waiver claims awarded to 19 NFL teams after the initial cut down to 53 players across the league. I read this on the air yesterday.
Yeah.
The New York Giants had the most claims with 3, Justin Hilliard, Colin Johnson, and Quincy Roche. Fact check me all you want, baby. I'm not Cliff Clavin. It's not a little-known fact. It just is a straight-up fact.
Do you two other things on this initial 53 that we're looking at. So Posick at center, we mentioned this with Hance, not in the 53. Who else is center material if something were to happen to Posick?
Michael Dunn would be your next center, and then Yelda Froholt would be your next center after that.
Right, so that's where you are on that front. And on the 2 tight ends, can you do that heading into week 1 to just have 2 up? Feels like we'd have to have 3.
You could have 2 up. You could. My guess is that you could have a third. You probably would have 3 up. And I have to go back and look at like the weekly roster elevations, because if you're able to, can't you expand your game day roster? Here we go. 2 players can be elevated from the practice squad each week to be eligible to play, as was the case the last 2 seasons. A player can be elevated to the active roster twice under a standard elevation and revert immediately back to the practice squad without having to clear waiver. So what we would do is, my guess is we'll have Forrestall, Nakia Griffin-Stewart, Zaire Mitchell-Payne, 2 of those guys probably on our practice squad. And so we would be able to elevate them a few times before them having to clear waivers, if that was indeed what we wanted to do.
All right, very good. Good job out of you, 51 out of 53. Coming up next, John Hansen. Get your fantasy notebooks out. He's got some fantasy sleepers, some of the guys he really believes in. It's going to be fun. He is the fantasy guru. He joins us coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family-owned and operated. Whether you join them as a customer or as an employee, you'll become part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. Well, we warned you, get your pens and papers, your notes apps opened. Time to get smarter. My guess is the vast majority of you are going to be drafting your fantasy teams over the course of this weekend. For some perspective on that, we go to a man simply known as the Guru, John Henson, morning host, Sirius XM Fantasy, analyst on DirecTV's Fantasy Zone channel. John, thank you so much for taking the time on this. Go ahead, Z. You have another quick anecdote.
And star of Curb Your Enthusiasm. He
well,
has a bucket list item that we can only hope to aspire to. He was in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Let's start there. Yes. How does that happen? How does that come
Tell
about,
him, Guru.
John?
Lay it on him.
Tell us.
What's going on, guys? Great to talk with you guys here. Draft season. Yeah. So long story short, Jeff Schaefer, who is Larry David's right-hand man, who writes and directs all the episodes, writes with Larry, is the guy who did that show, The League, based on fantasy football dudes. Big popular show. Was on, I believe, for 7 years. So, I think it was 13, 14 years ago, he just reached out. He was a fan, and he wanted to use my magazine for basically the first scene ever. Guy on the toilet there with the magazine, which I thought was an honor. Personally.
Very prestigious. Yes, that is.
And so we just started this big relationship, and we've been hanging out, and long story short, he said, I've done this before, a little bit of acting, and he's like, well, did you have any interest in being an extra on Curb? I'm like, would I? Of course. And then it worked out to where I actually got a line in the scene. Yeah. So it was great. I will say though, the first take, I froze like a deer in the headlights. Literally going through my brain, I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally doing a scene right now with Larry David. So we had to, pause and gather ourselves. And of course, Jeff Garland yelled, "Don't screw it up, Guru," which was no pressure whatsoever.
What is the episode for people who want to see it? What is the episode that you're in?
Yeah, oh boy, it aired on early December.
Is it the club?
It was like
talk about the girl's soup. Weren't you talking about?
No, but what's the big theme of the show? Do you remember, Z?
Well, the scene was in the country club where Larry hangs out, and he's upset with the woman who is a widow, and she's getting privileges like golf
the lobster
lessons, and she got Larry's last lobster.
Yes, that's it, the lobster.
His argument was it was her ex-husband, so she really wasn't a widow.
Great
and then
point.
I had to chime in there and yell at Larry a little bit.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So cool.
It's
very,
season
very
11,
envious.
episode 7.
Well, as soon as I said the lobster
I
order.
know that. My bad.
As soon as I said the lobster order in the country club, then I knew
Irma
exactly what it is. Irma.
Yeah.
She was
the
screwing
guy who
everything
goes,
up.
"She just lost her husband." That was
that's
it,
you.
She just lost her husband. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. What is, just from a strategy standpoint, everybody plays fantasy. Go ahead. You
just say real quick.
Go ahead.
Guru's going to break everything down for us right now, but the best thing you could do and the thing you should write down is fantasypoints.com. That is his website where you can go
there
and you can get everything you need. You're going to get a taste right here. You're going to get a little appetizer.
Aperitif.
But you want to go subscribe to fantasypoints.com. All right, proceed, Guru.
The question I was going to ask is, give us the best fantasy strategy that isn't done enough. Is there something that is, look, this is the game plan, follow this, that most people should follow that maybe they don't?
Well, I'll go a little macro and a little micro with it. Number one, I am a big-time ageist, so if you want to have maybe a little bit of a different take on it, I only target ascending players. If you've shown us your best football already and it's probably in the rear view, I probably won't take you. So that's number one. Just target guys whose best football is in front of them. It does make for some volatility, but it also makes for some unbelievable seasons and calls and things like that. And now when we look at it, quarterback this year, really, really deep, not that into the top guys. Running back is pretty deep, but there is a weird kind of range there, like rounds 3, 4, 5, where there's literally no one I'm interested in. Maybe Breece Hall if he goes to round number 4. I think you need to get into the running back business per usual. I think wide receiver this year is really top heavy. You have like 7 elite guys. I call them the Magnificent 7. It would be ideal to get one of those guys. It's not a deal breaker. But after that, the position is really, really deep. So I'm not in that much of a hurry to get wide receivers because you can really, there's buying opportunities left and right out there. Look at Romeo Doubs in Green Bay ascending like big time here. And then at tight end, I'm personally not usually someone who pays that premium. I'm a little worried about Kelsey at 33. So typically, and it definitely applies this year, I want the best of both worlds. I want like a second-tier guy who is a stud-like talent who could blow up, like a T.J. Hawkinson. And believe it or not, my big sleeper at tight end this year is Cole Kmet for the Chicago Bears. But there's a quick little snapshot.
I like that. And by the way, at fantasypoints.com, you write the draft strategy article every year, right? Where you give them the comprehensive way to navigate their drafts in addition to a bunch of different tools and cheat sheets and stuff that I used in my draft, which I think, by the way, went very well. But just tell people real quickly, pump them to the site of what they get in terms of their offerings to prepare themselves for the draft. And all season.
We have a really talented staff of really creative and excellent writers, but we also kind of cover it from all kinds of angles. I know you guys are very friendly with Greg Cosell.
Sure.
Well, I've worked with Greg for over 15 years as a, type of situation there. We run it up the flagpole. So we have the film room locked down. All the stat guys, we have myriad stat guys who are like, major stat nerds. I myself was a C- math student, so I hire smart math people. But I think the other thing, Nathan, you may not even be aware of this, but we have launched our own this year. So we're actually going to chart all plays and have our own proprietary actionable stats that are not widely available. So we got it all going on here.
I love the sound of that. Talking with John Hansen, the guru, the fantasy guru, fantasypoints.com. All right, when you look, and then you mentioned kind of, the overall strategy, who are the guys, and there can be 1, 2, 3, that are on all of your teams?
Oh, Gabe Davis is number one probably on every team. I called him kind of my breakout receiver. Every year I like to name like one wide receiver who is going to bust out. Last year it was Darnell Mooney, and I would call that a win because he finished at like wide receiver 21, I think, or 29,
absolutely.
and his ADP was 40. I love Mooney big time here, but Gabe Davis is someone I've always really loved. Nathan, you're a big number guy. The dude has scored a touchdown on 12% of his targets.
Yep.
In his career,
one for every
including
8.
the playoffs.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
and his targets are only going up this year. Is now the clear number 2 in Buffalo.
Yeah, he's going to get that for sure. I am a Javonte Williams person, of course. Last year his ADP was 55, and in my number one league we do on the radio show, I took him at 23. Okay, that's how much I loved him. Was it a great pick? Probably not great, because I don't think anyone expected Melvin to be, that good, but it was a damn good pick. And it's to my point. The year before I said the same thing about Jonathan Taylor. Just take Jonathan Taylor, because in 5 years when he's made 4 to 5 Pro Bowls, you're going to look back and say, yeah, that was a pretty good pick.
Absolutely. And by the way, I think Javonte next year is going to be like a top 5 pick. That's just it for the 2023
I would argue
season.
he should be a top 12 pick this year. But we'll see about Melvin. As we know, these running backs, they get older, they tend to not get better, they get worse.
What do you make of, let's just take an offense that has carried fantasy teams for so long, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now it's a different looking Kansas City Chiefs team. Who are you in on with the Chiefs? Who are you out on?
Oh, I have a very, very hot take on these Chiefs. And I've been fortunate enough to interview hundreds of players. I would say in my top 5 in terms of just like what an amazing guy. And by the way, David Bell of your Cleveland Browns is an amazing guy.
Yep,
I sat down with him. Awesome kid. But Sky Moore is my guy.
Okay.
I absolutely love him. I am all in. I am calling him a candidate to be the sleeper pick of the year. And again, that's a pretty contrarian take here, because a lot of people are in on Juju and they're respecting Mecole Hardman and MVS. But MVS is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He does have some drop issues. He's never been a high-volume guy. Mecole Hardman at this point is like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football. And Juju Smith-Schuster missed 2 weeks of practice with a knee, which is notable because it's a chronic knee, and he's had only 1-year contract offers at 24-25 the last couple of years. So I think it all lines up for Sky Moore. He's got like running back legs, basically. He looked like a running back below the waist. He played a little bit of running back. He can also line up outside. He does run a solid 4.40, and he's got massive hands. If you've seen any clips of him really making some great catches, I think they're hiding him, by the way, in the preseason, but there have been a couple of clips of him really hauling in some great balls there, and the massive hands. He's got a great short area quickness. So do you think a guy with great short area quickness, running back legs, and massive hands, do you think Andy Reid is going to use that guy well? I think so.
I would say so. I think you'd be exactly right about that. By the way, you'll be very pleased. So my wife drafted last night, Guru, and she was in the 7th spot in a 10-team league. She has on her roster, and this is just off the top of my head, she went Jefferson, Najee, first 2, Javonte in the 3rd. She's got Gabe Davis as her 3rd receiver. And she's got Sky Moore as deep on the roster because obviously when you go to
she was doing this all independently. You had nothing to do with it.
She did do it independently, but with the help of FantasyPoints.com, which is basically like having the guru right there.
She's gurific, is what it is.
Exactly. He's got his own words. I love it. All right, let's talk about the Browns real quickly. From a fantasy standpoint, I think the name that everybody would know, Nick Chubb, and he is a stud, but there is Kareem Hunt here. You've got Jerome Ford, who showed a lot maybe for dynasty leagues. But is there anybody from the Browns that maybe ends up on your roster this year?
Well, look, I'm not going to rule anyone out. I mean, I said before he took a snap in the NFL, Nick Chubb's a stud. I mean, the guy's been great. Kareem Hunt, I absolutely loved him his rookie year. And by the way, that's a great tip, too. Like, that's where you get the buying opportunities, the rookies. You got to take a leap of faith.
Sure.
Kareem Hunt's rookie year in 2017, I ranked him at 20 overall. And he was like a 3rd-round pick, but I'm like, he's in the 2nd. He fumbled on his first carry, and I almost passed out, but it worked out well. I do love David Bell as a dude, and he's going to be like gluey, kind of holding together.
Yep.
I do like Donovan Peoples-Jones as well. For the Browns, and I know you love David Njoku, I certainly like David Njoku. I'm a Harrison Bryant guy. I guess it's not going to happen this year.
Sure.
But, certainly the Browns have plenty of really good players, a very good roster.
They do, and the one guy I would say I think is going to maybe surprise people just from the chemistry that I've seen with Jacoby Brissett and just how good he has been here is Amari. I mean, I think he's clearly the number one target. It's just going to depend how much we throw the football in terms of his fantasy ceiling. But he's probably, if you get him as a 3rd or you can get him as a 4th receiver in a lot of cases, he's not going to hurt you at that standpoint. You probably have upside.
Yeah, there's something to be said for, like, the guy, the alpha dog. Like, he commands the ball when they throw it. So, absolutely. And, a little bit of a dip here, obviously. So, take advantage. And that is a rock-solid wide receiver 3. I certainly would agree with that.
Is there an ascending quarterback that's being drafted too low consistently that you like, considering that's kind of your philosophy in all of these things?
Yeah, well, I think it's a very, very obvious name, but we get to this range of picks in fantasy drafts this summer. It's like 50, 60, where I think the good running backs are gone. The wide receivers all look the same. The way the ADP is lining up, it's just not a great spot to take a tight end. So I found myself like, all right, I'll just take Joe Burrow here. I mean, The guy's only like on a Hall of Fame track already, ADP of 71. I think that's fine. I think right in that same spot, too, if you're a little stuck. I am in on Jalen Hurts. I don't know if it's an ascending situation, but I think it might be because they want to be a little bit more of a throwing team, and obviously A.J. Brown is huge. Pretty good vibes there. And then on the lower end, I'm not into most of these quarterbacks. Mahomes, he's been good this summer. Lamar and Kyler and Russell and Dak. Some of these guys have issues. I'm in on Derek Carr. Hopefully for the best with Darren Waller. But I've always loved Carr, and I think he'll be fully unlocked with Devontae and Josh McDaniels.
All right, Guru. Last one, and this is great stuff. Again, you can go. You're listening right now to a Fantasy Sports Writers Association Hall of Famer, and you can go to fantasypoints.com to get all of this. And there are so many tools on here, so many great articles. You're right. You have such a great team. It's a fun site. Like just as a football fan, you will get smarter, and it'll certainly help you win your fantasy league. So go to fantasypoints.com. All right, last round, total flyer. Who's somebody you like?
Oh, wow. Well, it's funny because some of these leagues where, really good players are falling really far. Like Wan'Dale Robinson,
Yeah.
it might be a guy that you can get in the last round. The vibes have been horrible with Kenny Golladay, so I really like Wan'Dale Robinson. Brevin Jordan, if you're still looking for a tight end in Houston. As a long shot guy, I think that's a pretty viable one here. Let's see here. I actually kind of like Austin Hooper, if you can believe that. I even think Kenny Pickett has a chance last round if you're looking for a quarterback to be kind of like this year's Mac Jones in that. I think he's going to play, and I think he's pretty good. Alec Pierce, the wideout rookie in Indy, Nico Collins. As you can see, I am all about these young players, basically drafting off of last year's cheat sheet. One more, Zamir White in Vegas. If Josh Jacobs has any problems, and he probably will, the current regime drafted Zamir White. My prediction is that Zamir White is starting for the Raiders in November and December. And then Ty Davis-Price, too, if Elijah Mitchell has problems in that backfield in San Fran.
Ooh, see, that's why they call him the guru. Some gurific advice right there. Thank you so much for the time, and catch him like every morning right there on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, where I once upon a time, that's right, we shared the airwaves, me and the guru. Tremendous.
They still miss us. They pine for it daily.
That's right.
Thanks for your time, John.
You got it, guys. Have a great day.
You too. That's John Hansen, of course, SiriusXM Fantasy, analyst on DirecTV's Fantasy Zone channel, majority owner of Fantasy Points. That was very, very good. You can follow him on Twitter at @fantasy_guru, and you get some good information there.
People ask me on Twitter all the time, they say, because I obviously used to be in this world. FantasyPoints.com will help you be better at fantasy. It is very reasonably priced, and it is, I think, the most comprehensive and best website out there. So that's not because there's a ton of them out there, and I have friends in many different fantasy companies. This one is the best. This is the one when I did my draft.
Yeah.
This is who I used for my draft.
It's great work.
That's a fact.
All right. We have a 53. We will go over that with you. Then Jake Trotter at the bottom of the hour. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. And the Land on Demand is now free in the palm of your hands during the entire month of August. ESPN Cleveland and the Bath Authority giving fans free access to the Land on Demand for all the news you don't want to miss. See us live in the brand new studios or play all your favorite shows commercial-free and on demand and get all access to Tony Grossi's Browns analysis and more. Visit thelandondemand.com or download the app today. The Land on Demand, remodeled by the Bath Authority. So we have our 53. We'll talk with Jake about this in about 10 minutes.
Yep.
But you have your 53.
Initial.
It is set, initial 53. That's always the key to this thing.
Yep.
The crazy thing about this was there wasn't – I mean, I know that around here we're used to this, like panicking about this stuff. But, like – and these are human beings that you know well.
Yeah.
So you're invested. But these are the last 4 or 5 people on the roster.
For sure.
Basically 40 – what do we figure? 45, 46 were locks heading into this weekend.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a whole lot that was being decided, and likely nothing that is decided here, if it has much bearing on the season hasn't gone well. You had major injuries.
Correct.
If anything here in these last couple of spots. To me, when I think of the most noteworthy, I want to run 3 things by you. We touched on this when we initially dropped. I sense nice, good news on Michael Woods. That jumps out to me right away.
That's a good thing. I still think that room – and while you like him and he could end up being a tremendous steal, much the way that Donovan Peoples-Jones was, betting on hitting that late in the draft consistently is a difficult thing at that premium of a position. Now, he has been very impressive in the limited time that we have seen him. So the question becomes, can he, produce for us this year? To me, that room still feels somewhat incomplete, as does the tight end room, and I feel like the offensive line and defensive end rooms are overloaded.
It does feel that way. So 10 instead of 9 on the offensive line. The other thing I was going to bring up to you was just the 2 tight ends.
Yeah, and that room needs an addition, wide receiver and tight end. And I want to make one quick correction. Now in 2022, you can be elevated from the practice squad 3 times before you would have to clear waivers to revert back to the practice squad. So imagine a world in which the Browns have 4 tight ends here in the program. You could go through the first 6 games of the year if you had 2 without having to have that 3rd tight end. So it gives you flexibility early in the year if that's what they decide they want to do with it. So that's just something to keep an eye on, that it is possible that it's not just the 2 tight ends. It's what's the tight end room plus the tight ends on the practice squad, where you could have, if you had 2 of them on the practice squad, that's 3 weeks apiece, 6 games. We're into the middle of October before you even actually need that quote-unquote 3rd tight end on your 53.
I'm also curious your view of the special teams breakdown, because if you're talking 10 defensive linemen and 6 defensive ends, those usually aren't special teams guys. So you have 6 linebackers, 5 corners, 5 safeties. So you can probably get enough there, but it's a little tight, isn't it, with the 60 ends?
So here's the thing. So you're going to, on like your coverage teams and your return teams, my guess is Harrison Bryant's going to play some special teams. You're going to get – he's going to have to. Felton plays special teams. Mike Woods is probably going to have to play some special teams. And then you go, I know Chase plays special teams, Winovich. And then you're going to get, I would think, probably Tony Fields for sure, Taki, Kunashik playing special teams. A.J. Green, M.J. Emerson are going to have to play special teams.
LeCount.
D'Anthony Bell, LeCount will play special teams. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, that's plenty.
That's right.
And then Jerome Ford will play special teams. He'll probably do some returning for you. D'Ernest plays special teams. So you're still good. It's just that's what, you have a great special teams coordinator like Mike Briefer, and he's going to have to make adjustments. Now, here's the other thing. Again, Herb Miller, who we talked about as being, a premier gunner, let's say he comes back on our practice squad, he can be your gunner the first 3 weeks with an elevation. So that's a change that I think people aren't being cognizant of when they're looking at this. Like, oh, my God, 2 tight ends. They've got to have a tight end. You just need to have a tight end, another tight end in your program, and then he, in essence, can get you through the first 3 weeks of the season without having to clear waivers and to stay in your program. So that's something that, again, I would look at and keep in mind as we go through these things.
So that's where you stand at this point. This happening just in the last couple of minutes. Mike Tomlin saying that he is not ready to name a starter yet at quarterback in Pittsburgh 10 days
Mike
out.
Tomlin said that?
Yeah.
So that's, again, this is a competitive thing, right? They seem They know what they're doing.
Is there a difference between preparing for Trubisky and Pickett?
He's probably a little more mobile, right?
Trubisky probably is a little more mobile.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. So that would probably be it.
Interesting, though, that they would leave it up to the last week like that.
Here's a surprise out of Houston. Marlon Mack being released by the Texans, which means Dameon Pierce is going to be the guy. That's big.
Felt like it was headed that way anyway.
Yeah.
Down in Houston, that he could be the guy. So that's something to pay attention to. I got a fantasy draft tonight for NBC.
Yeah.
The annual fantasy draft.
Oh,
NBC
really?
Tonight.
Let's
He's
go.
ready to go. Yeah, very good. Gonna be fun.
What are the rules?
I can't even remember.
So
no, we're good. No need to break. Jake can wait. Give me it. They're like Dr. Evil and Mini-Me, both just going. Don't worry, Jake.
Okay.
We'll get to Jake.
Hold on real quickly. Cynthia Freeland is trying to, I guess, kind of clarify what happened earlier.
I bet.
And Gibbe, this is your girl. She said she told Baker to go F them up, and he repeated it back to her in agreement.
Oh, now she's putting herself into it?
She's saying that I'm the one who said go F them up about the Browns, and he said, yeah, I'm going to F them up.
That's your girl.
No, she was saying that, according to her, she was saying that for the season, not just for week 1 in the Browns.
Oh, this is a dicey. I don't know about this.
Slip,
I don't know how
slip,
we feel about
slip,
this.
Slide
She just should have not.
away.
She should have just
not said anything. About
Not
that.
said anything, and then it wouldn't have been a problem.
That's right.
Jake will join us coming up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Serious Lawyer, serious injuries. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO for a free case review. Elk & Elk's a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. All right, let's head out on the hotline for a visit with our great friend Jake Trotter. ESPN. Well, we have it. We have an initial 53. How'd you do, pal? How close did you get?
You know, it's pretty close. I conceded to Nathan last week on Kucinich versus
my man Kunashik.
But
yeah,
Kunashik. I'm sorry. My 53 was in like 10 days ago, and I wasn't going to change it at that point. But I conceded to Nathan. He knew that he was right. I was wrong. Although Dakota did get banged up a little bit in training camp.
Yes.
So, I think the spot I kind of surprisingly messed up a little was offensive line. Like I didn't think that Drew Forbes was going to make it over Blake Hance. Nathan's guy Froholt from Lord of the Rings Sinkhole.
Yes.
Made the roster as well, which I thought might happen, but wasn't positive. But I think otherwise I was pretty on point. The one area where I thought that they would keep more guys, and I can't imagine that the receiving core they have right now is the one they're going to go to Carolina with. I don't think they can go to Carolina with just those 5 guys at receiver. But, I did think they would keep one more of the players that they cut, which they'll probably try to get back on the practice squad. So I did okay. Like, I would probably give myself like a C+.
Listen, that's all right.
Look, everybody aspires to be Z. 51 out of 53 is all the kid got right. I mean,
I know. I missed.
I know.
I had a third tight end and not 10 offensive linemen, and I had Herb Miller making it. And I think he'll be back on the practice squad at corner. And I didn't have all 6 defensive ends. That was a surprise. 6 defensive ends is a lot of defensive ends. I thought 5 was a lot, but to go with 6. So I think you're right. Yeah. There's some flexibility. Are you here? And the people that you have spoken to, what is and it's really 6 receivers. Felton is a receiver for all intents and purposes on this team. So we've got 6, but to your point, you don't feel necessarily great about that 6. Are you hearing anything in terms of, are there trades potentially? Are there people the Browns are interested? What have you heard as it relates to that spot in particular?
Yeah, I really haven't heard much. I think O.J. Howard, he's a tight end, would be a name to watch. That was surprising to me that the Bills let him go, although you wonder why would the Bills let him go, just given his pedigree as a draft pick. So that might be a name to keep an eye on. You're going to have somebody like Jalen Reagor. Was he cut today? I don't know if he was cut or not.
No, the guy that Devin Allen was cut, though, that speedster.
Okay. Yeah, so our guy right
That's
there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard any, specific names, but I would have to imagine that they are kicking the tires on multiple receiver options because, again, you look at the 53 and that just jumps out. It's got to be better than what it looks like on paper right now, just based on what we've seen. And part of it too is of your 5 receivers, 2 of them are rookies. One of which basically wasn't able to practice in training camp, and one who missed the first 2 or 3 weeks and is just now kind of, I think, finding his stride in David Bell. So. I think Anthony Schwartz's struggles are well documented. I think that's the area that if you're going to trade for somebody, that's the one to watch. And I don't know that they can swing it, but you would think that there's a deal to be done where you send out a running back and you get a wide receiver. I don't know if they can do that. Positional scarcity is going to make it tougher to trade for a wide receiver than to trade away. Trade for. It's gonna be tougher to trade for a wide receiver than trade away one. But
sure,
that's kind of the area of the roster that sticks out to me.
Yeah, that's the thing that's tough is you've got a glut of talent, absurd talent at running back, Jake. You've got a glut of talent in the middle of the offensive line. Those aren't typically positions of great need around the league, right? And what you need is, when you look at this, I've been on the receiver thing for over a month. I think it's been an issue for a long time, and I think this thing was put together with the idea that Deshaun Watson was going to play the majority of the games. He's not, and so to your point, 2 rookies and Woods has missed so much time. Heck, Bell and Schwartz have missed time as well. So it's just there's not enough there, but the options are very, very limited in terms of what you could do to upgrade via trade. It's hard to imagine anything substantial coming in, isn't it?
Yeah, it is hard. And they might be able to upgrade on the margins, but I don't know at this point that you can just transform an entire position group like your receiving core without giving up substantial assets, of which the Browns are lacking because of the Deshaun Watson trade. So, yeah, I mean, that is something that is going to be tough and something they're going to have to overcome. And you factor in that you're essentially playing a backup quarterback for much of the season in Jacoby Brissett. It's tough to be a playoff team when you have a passing offense going into the season that, let's face it, it's not going to rank very high on paper right now.
Right.
I think the thing that has hurt them, and we'll see if it actually ends up hurting them once the season begins, because I think it's too early to write anybody off, but they really need DPJ and Schwartz to take big steps forward. And I think that's what they were banking on with the composition of that position. And, Schwartz is obviously struggling to catch the ball. And, DPJ just kind of had a quiet preseason. Like, I don't know that he's struggled or anything, but
didn't play much, yeah.
He really hasn't popped either. So those are the two guys that, they really needed to take big steps forward, and that can still happen. But if it doesn't, it really leaves you in a hole at that position, which is, as we've seen with all the big trades all this offseason, a coveted and really crucial position.
No doubt. Talking with Jake Trotter. Jake, one thing we did not see at all in the preseason, Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt. Is your expectation, like that of many, that this team is going to just really lean in and embrace those two as the focal point, and in many ways what it has been in the past, but as the true focal point of this offense, especially in the early going when the schedule is a little more favorable?
Yeah, there's no doubt. Although the other thing that I think is interesting about the roster, and I think you guys touched on it last segment, only two tight ends, no fullbacks. Yep. And Kevin Stefanski has used both as much or more than any other play caller in the NFL the last two seasons. And we knew that the offense was transitioning to a more receiver-heavy, wide-open offense. The question I have, do you have the personnel for that?
Sure.
And then number two, okay, they can, and they're going to sign tight ends to the practice squad, including maybe one or two that they just cut. But, are you going to be in multi-tight end sets at all? Are you going to just be in 3 and 4 wide receiver sets and try to run the ball that way? I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I would love to see them use Kareem Hunt maybe more creatively than they have in the past. We've seen Demetric Felton line up all over the place. We really haven't seen as much of that with Hunt. But if you're looking for your best 11 guys to be on the field at once, that involves both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. And you got a guy like Nick Chubb, you got those guards, that can cover up for a lot. But they're going to have to show that they can throw the ball down the field, or they're going to face a lot of heavy boxes, which makes it much more difficult to run the ball.
Yeah, it certainly does. And then just from just a logistical standpoint, again, this is an initial 53. So you have tomorrow where there will be some work done. You've got some waiver wire claims that are going to have to be sorted out. And so there could be some jockeying on this roster in the next 24 hours. Jake, do you sense that the Browns will be busy?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that you got to call this an initial 53.
Yep.
It's not going to be the final 53. I mean, I think that there are 3 or 4 guys that they could still add to make their final 53, particularly the positions we're talking about just now. But, I mean, I don't think in all my seasons covering the Browns that they've had just the initial 53 has been the final one. There'll be a lot of movement. There'll be some guys come available that they'll be interested in. I guarantee there's some guys out there that they're going to be targeting. So, it's not going to be the final 53 by any means. And, I think that particularly wide receiver, tight end, and then, kind of what they do maybe at corner, I think would be interesting. You might need another corner, given that they waived Herb Miller, another guy who I think could be back on the practice squad as well, as I think you guys mentioned. But, there's going to be a lot of movement, and not just the Browns, across the NFL. This is not by any means in stone.
All right. Week 1 is Carolina, and we know that I think something's probably been a little bit blown out of proportion. Nonetheless, what do you make of this? And does this game, could it get any bigger from that personal standpoint, or what do you kind of just make of everything as we get ready here, just over under 2 weeks away from that game?
Well, I mean, the game is going to be super compelling, and not just for Browns fans or Panthers fans, but I think everybody who's a football fan
Yeah.
is going to be paying attention to that game because it's so compelling with Baker against his former team and just everything that happened at quarterback for the Browns this offseason. If you're referring to like the what was it, the sideline comment at the end of the I don't know what to make of that. I mean, the story kind of keeps changing. I can't imagine Baker said that. If he did say it, he said it thinking that was going to get out. It seems like he was just kind of playing around. But I guarantee, like, having covered college football, where they would just make up quotes from the opposing team, to get their guys fired up. There are different programs that would just, fabricate quotes out of thin air and put them on lockers. I think the Browns will be aware of that. Not that they need any more motivation. I think everybody knows what's at stake. And, if you can't bring your best for this game and you need kind of like a phony quote to get you going, I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't think it'll have a huge bearing. But listen, there's a lot of time before that game. So who knows what's going to be said between now and then.
Well, and I think also, Jake, and Nathan and I have talked about this a lot on the show, I just think, like, from a personnel, forget about the film or what's on tape or the All-22 or all of that over the last couple of years, you see that there is very much a fundamental difference in how Baker wants to be, and we saw that at his best nurtured at Oklahoma, and at times here at his best 2 years ago, where he's all of that, but also that doesn't mesh necessarily with Stefanski and Barry and everybody that's here running the Browns now. But that's who he is, right? And that's, to me, like, whether he said this off the cuff or off the record, and I'm sure it was all of those things, I think it's pretty innocent. I'm with you on it. I don't think anybody needs any more motivation.
Yeah.
It also is who he is. I mean, he is Arya Stark in that way, in that he keeps a list with names. So you're going to get whatever his best is with chip on his shoulder. You'll get it on Sunday, a week from Sunday.
Yeah, and whatever he said or didn't say, he's definitely thinking that.
Yeah.
Like, I can just tell you that this is – he's been in this situation before, whether it was Texas Tech or, Ohio State after they, annihilated OU and Norman, coming back and planting the flag in Ohio Stadium. Whether it was staring down Hugh in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's definitely who Baker is. There's no doubt about it. So – I think the other thing, too, just like having cash – I haven't really watched Carolina's preseason games, but it seems like we're going to get – if you're expecting to see the Baker we saw at Monday Night Football against Pittsburgh, I think you're going to be disappointed. I think this is going to be closer to the 2020 version of Baker based on what I've seen from the preseason. So I think the Browns are going to get his best shot, and, I think the Browns are going to come to play as well. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it will be. I think it feels like they're all in. With him for this year. Like,
well, they have no choice.
No, they have no other quarterbacks, but also, like, the Chenault thing, Matt Rule, it feels like Rule's time is dwindling. Like, this is like a 1 year. Let's see what we can do with this group. And if not, we reset next year with Matt Corral, and away we go.
100%. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and I think that they are an intriguing team, especially in the NFC. The AFC, I think they're a little bit less compelling because, I mean, there's 13 playoff teams in the AFC.
Yeah.
In the NFC, like, go look down the standings, find me the 6th playoff team, find me the 7th playoff team. Like, they're in that conversation. And if they win week 1, all of a sudden I think people are going to be looking at them differently. Christian McCaffrey obviously has injury, concerns, but he's going to be healthy week 1. And they've got some firepower offensively with that receiving core. Our old friend Rashard Higgins, the number 4, number 5 guy on that receiving core. They just made the trade for the guy from Colorado. So I think that they are going to be an interesting test for the defense because they've got enough firepower to test you.
No doubt, and that'll be a fun one, September the 11th. All right, real quick, Jake. Is Cade York the most fun kicker to cover in the league right now? Or is it just because he's here?
In my fantasy leagues, I keep assuming like no one's going to draft him, and then he's like the 3rd kicker off the board. I'm even in a league without Browns, like no Browns fans are in this league. This is like an Oklahoma City league, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna get Cade York, and I'm gonna have like the 3rd best kicker in fantasy, and he's like gone before like 4 rounds still to go. So I haven't been able to get him on my team, but I have to write a lot of these like fantasy updates, and I don't consider myself a fantasy expert, but if you haven't had your draft yet, go get Cade York because I think he's going to have a monster year.
Yeah, it certainly feels like it, all things considered. Great talking to you, buddy. Thanks for your time.
Okay, guys. Take care.
All right, that's the great Jake Trotter of ESPN.
Yes.
Just saying this, the Raiders waiving former first-round pick Alex Leatherwood.
Oh, yeah.
Feels like Mike Mayock missed on everything in the first round, but then he also had like Max Crosby and the kid out of Clemson.
Yeah, some good later, Hunter
Renfro. Like, he had some good late-round stuff, but he just overthought the first round, it seems like. He overcooked a lot of those first-round picks.
It sure does feel that way.
Yeah. Didn't they have Cleveland Farrell? Wasn't he in that mix?
And
the kid from Mississippi State, the safety from Mississippi State, Damon Arnett.
Yeah.
They had Gary Connolly. They drafted him too. And then, the Ruggs they've had a lot of big trouble. Not great at all. So much more to come. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
ESPN Cleveland.
There's a new way to cheer on your Cleveland Browns with the help of your favorite four-legged companion, Barking Backers, presented by Milk-Bones, the Browns' newest club for pet parents worldwide. Sign up today at barkingbackers.com. Barking Backers, the fan club for dogs. This Alex Leatherwood story is even more. In my head, I thought he was in his third year.
Same.
In his second. So first-round pick, 17th overall last year. 2021.
They're eating $5 million just to get him out of their program. Ian Rappaport said they tried to trade him, but they got 32 no's.
Maybe not exactly.
Garoppolo funny. # math. Right. Unless they're 33
Good job.
teams.
I like NFL Network on NFL Network Crime.
Yeah,
that's always good.
That's good.
this is a guy who's a huge recruit out of Alabama, was really good at Alabama. There must be something from a personality standpoint that just doesn't – that's gotten out, that's around the league, because it's a ball of clay that you would think would still be able to mold.
Well, nobody thought he was a first-round pick to begin with.
No, they overdrafted him for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
But maybe he's just wrecked mentally,
Could be. Yeah. That's rare, though.
It
You don't
feels
see
like-
that first-round pick from the previous year cut the next year.
It feels like you say, Bill Callahan, what can you do? Here are their first-round picks 2019 to 2021 real quickly. Cleveland Farrell, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, all fifth-year options declined. 2020, Ruggs, Damon Arnett, both waived following off-field incidents. 2021, Alex Leatherwood
30.
waived after one season.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yikes.
But then he's got some hits in the middle
Right,
rounds.
and they win. And they still
won.
win.
They still win because you got a quarterback, right?
That's right.
And that's where it starts. The next level's coming up next. We're back tomorrow. Cleveland Browns.